senators, and representatives, I have the distinguished honor of presenting the President of the United States.
Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Indeed, 1 hour after Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the American island of Oahu, the Japanese ambassador to the United States and his colleague delivered to our Secretary of State a formal reply to a recent American message. And while this reply stated that it seemed useless to continue the existing diplomatic negotiations, it contained no threat or hint of war or of armed attack. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States by false statements and expressions of hope for continued peace. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack against Malaya. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Hong Kong. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam. Last night, Japanese forces attacked the Philippine Islands. Last night, the Japanese attacked Wake Island. And this morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island. Japan has therefore undertaken a surprise offensive extending throughout the Pacific area. The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and well understand the implications to the very life and safety of our nation. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, but always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us. no matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. I believe that I interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us. Hostilities exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. So help us God. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Built of red South Dakotan granite and sprawling over 7.5 acres, the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial has the largest footprint of any memorial in the nation's capital. Opened in 1997, the memorial honors the memory of 32nd President of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt, a transformational figure in American history whose presidency redefined the relationship between the national government and the nation's citizenry. The memorial itself is divided into 4 rooms depicting his 4 respective terms in office. He was the only president to be confined to a wheelchair, so his memorial is designed with particular emphasis on accessibility to the disabled. A statue of FDR sits at the entrance, showing the late president in his wheelchair wearing his spectacles and a fedora. Originally, there was no statue of FDR clearly seated in his chair anywhere within the memorial, which was inspired by FDR's attempts to hide his disability. After the memorial was opened, however, advocates for the disabled wanted this changed, and a compromise was reached to add a new statue at the memorial entrance. Additionally, in the nearby visitor center, a replica of FDR's actual wheelchair is also accessible to visitors. Visitors to the memorial take a journey through FDR's 4 terms of office, through rooms decorated with statuary, inscriptions, and water features which are currently under repair. The first room is focused on FDR's first term, the second on his second term, and so on. The first begins with the presidential seal and quotations which focus on FDR's initial election during the Great Depression, an economic catastrophe which left a third of Americans out of work. In order to combat this, Franklin Roosevelt promised to revive the American economy by inaugurating a series of far-reaching economic programs which were dubbed the New Deal. The room concludes with a relief carving of the president waving to the adoring crowds from inside his limousine. The second-term room shows American life during the Great Depression through a series of statuary groupings. The first is of someone listening to the radio as FDR delivers one of his fireside chats. The next is a group of unemployed men standing in a bread line, and the third is a farming couple who've lost everything in the Dust Bowl, an ecological disaster which struck the American heartland while the Depression still raged. The second part of this room is filled with bronze reliefs that are indented and outdented, meant to depict the dual responses that Americans had to FDR's economic policies. Some thought they were genius, and some thought they made the Great Depression even greater. The third room is focused on World War II, and the stone within the room is notably jumbled to symbolize the chaos of war. This room also depicts FDR seated in his wheelchair and covered with a cape, a reference to his desire to keep the extent of his disability hidden from the American people. The fourth and final room begins with President Roosevelt's passing. A bronze relief panel depicts his funerary procession a year into his fourth term after he passed away from a brain hemorrhage in Warm Springs, Georgia in 1945. Also present in the room is his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, the only First Lady to have a statue in Washington, D.C. She was a diplomat in FDR's administration and the liberal conscience of the Democratic Party until her passing in the 1960s. She was also the first U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, as denoted by the UN seal behind her. The memorial concludes with a massive inscription of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's 4 freedoms, which he outlined in 1941, proposing fundamental freedoms which people everywhere in the world ought to enjoy. These freedoms are freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear.